Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue, and I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to create a new earth. And today we are continuing to read the Satanic Bible. We're going to be exploring specifically the book of Lucifer, and the section that we're going to be exploring is called Hell, the Devil, and How to Sell Your Soul. So this is going to be a very good topic as we take a look at the satanic interpretation of what it means to sell your soul, what hell and the devil mean, as we continue to explore the book of Lucifer in the Satanic Bible. And you know what is very interesting, by the way? The Satanic Bible was written by Anton LaVey. And so there's a hashtag. I hashtagged this video, Anton LaVey. And this is the 666th video with the hashtag Anton LaVey. So you know it's going to be a good one. We've got the devil on our side for this video. All right, we're going to get started. But as always, make sure that you hit like and subscribe. And if you enjoy my work and you want to help me grow and reach more people, support here on YouTube or on Patreon. You can hit the join button right below this video and see all the different levels and perks that you get. You can get access to all of our members only videos. I think there's probably hundreds of them by now. There's a new one every single week, and you can get access to our Discord server where we have live study groups and stuff like that. It's really great. Check it out. Helps out a lot. Also, my book is available right now. Make sure that you go check it out. It's Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. And quite a few of my books are actually out right now that outline my philosophy and understanding of reality through the Neogenian system. So check it out. And the links are in the description of this video. It's a great way to understand reality, metaphysics, higher consciousness rationally. So let us get started. Like I said, we're taking a look at the Satanic Bible, specifically the book of Lucifer, called Hell, the Devil, and How to Sell Your Soul. That's what we're talking about today. But we're also going to be comparing this. We've done a couple videos in this series, by the way. If you haven't seen them yet, there's a whole playlist. Go check them out. And you'll notice that in each of these series, I've been comparing them to the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche. We looked at his book, The Antichrist. We look at his ideas in Beyond Good and Evil. And this is because, like I said, I'm an ex-Christian, and I was actually exposed to the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche before I was Anton LaVey and the Satanic Bible. And so I came from a Nietzschean mindset, and reading the Satanic Bible from that mindset, you can see that there is a huge influence from Friedrich Nietzsche on LaVey and Satanism. Now, so anyway, we're going to be taking a look today, in addition to the Satanic Bible and Satanism and hell and the devil, we're going to be taking a look at what Friedrich Nietzsche had to say about his God, which was Dionysus. And this is a statue I have of actually Bacchus. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus. Bacchus, which is the Roman equivalent to Dionysus. So it's Dionysus essentially. And so you can see that Dionysus here is holding grapes, and there's a bucket of wine being poured out. And so the god of Dionysus represents chaos, art, sexuality, intoxication. And essentially, Nietzsche said that Jesus Christ should be replaced by Dionysus. So we're going to be exploring all these ideas today and seeing how they connect. It's going to be good. I'm excited for this. It's going to be a great one. And let's just get started right away and get right into it. So I'm going to start by taking a look at this quote. We're looking at the book of Satan. No, I'm sorry. This is in the Satanic Bible, but the book of Lucifer. And remember, the Satanic Bible is divided into 4 parts. The book of Satan being the first part, the book of Lucifer being the second part. And the book of Lucifer is all about laying out satanic philosophy, what Satanists believe, essentially. And this section is called Hell, the Devil, and How to Sell Your Soul. So it starts by saying Satan has certainly been the best friend that the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. So what Anton LaVey is essentially saying is that the concept of the devil is necessary for Christianity to have its power. Because if you think about it, Christianity uses something known as operant conditioning, which is which specifically it uses a carrot and stick method, which essentially hell is the stick and heaven is the carrot. And what this basically means is that operant conditioning using the carrot and stick method is that you condition an individual to do something that you want by promising them a reward if they do something good, which is the carrot, or a punishment if they do something wrong, which is the stick. And you can kind of imagine it like, have you ever seen those cartoons where they have a donkey where there's like a stick strapped to its neck and a carrot is dangling in front of them, so they're walking forward to try and get the carrot. And then if it doesn't do what it wants, the rider will usually hit the donkey with a stick, which is terrible and awful. But this is essentially Christianity's carrot is heaven, and the stick is the devil and hell. So this is what essentially Anton LaVey is getting at when he's saying that the devil has kept Christianity in business all these years, and so why it's the church's best friend. And so LaVey continues by saying the false doctrine of hell and the devil has allowed the Protestant and Catholic churches to flourish far too long. Without a devil to point their fingers at, religionists of the right-hand path would have nothing with which to threaten their followers. Quote, Satan leads you to temptation. Satan is the prince of evil. So Satan in the Christian faith is the ultimate stick, the ultimate boogeyman, the ultimate story that you tell to keep people in line. And hey, guess what? It works very well. I remember growing up Christian, I have RTS, or religious trauma syndrome, which basically mimics the symptoms of PTSD and CPTSD, which one can get when they leave a religion that they've been conditioned into. And so hell was a huge fear of mine. Hell was something that I was absolutely, utterly terrified of. Because remember, think about telling that to a child, an impressionable child. Hey, if you don't do what God wants, you are going to burn in hell for eternity. Kids believe that. I mean, most people who are Christian believe that. But telling that to a poor kid who believes in Santa, if you tell them Santa is true, you tell them you're going to burn in hell for eternity, that's horrible. That's abusive. It leads to psychological issues. It's terrible. Anyway, so let's continue and see what LaVey has to say. So LaVey says, Satan represents opposition to all religions. Okay, so Satan is a Hebrew word, which means adversary or accuser. So Satan stands as the adversary. So he's this rebel archetype. And so LaVey says Satan represents opposition to all religions, which serve to frustrate and condemn man for his natural instincts. He has been given an evil role simply because he represents the carnal, earthly, and mundane aspects of life. So, according to LaVey, Satan is a symbol that represents those religions that try to inhibit human beings' natural instincts. And since Satan represents human beings' natural instincts, the church applies an evil role to Satan, looks at Satan as being an evil being because he represents everything carnal and earthly and material and fleshly, of the flesh. By the way, real quick, I always want to point out that Satanism and Luciferianism are very different. Today, we are talking about Satanism. If you want to know about Luciferianism, check out my video called Satanism versus Luciferianism. I just want to point that out because Lucifer's... Anyway, just throwing that out there. So, LaVey says, Satan, the chief devil of the Western world, was originally an angel whose duty was to report human delinquencies to God. And that's absolutely right. So we think of Satan today, like in terms of Christianity, as being like God's almost not on equal level with God, but pretty darn powerful, and being, God's ultimate adversary, the ultimate villain. And, the arch nemesis of God. We tend to look at Satan as the arch nemesis of God. But that was not originally the role of Satan. Satan meant accuser or adversary, and he was a servant of God. Satan was actually a servant of God, and it was his job to play the role of accuser. And so he was kind of like a prosecutor in a courtroom. The prosecutor isn't against the judge. God would sort of be like the judge. The prosecutor isn't against the judge. The prosecutor is simply accusing and providing evidence to try and convict someone. So Satan was a servant of God. It wasn't until later, and LaVey's going to make this point, so let's see what LaVey has to say. It wasn't until the 14th century that he began to be depicted as an evil deity who was part man and part animal with goat-like horns and hooves. Before Christianity gave him the names of Satan and Lucifer, etc., the carnal side of man's nature was governed by the god, which was then called Dionysus or Pan, depicted as a satyr. So this is why, like I said, you can see a lot of influence in Satanism from the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche. And so you can see here that Satan represents the carnal side or human nature. That's what Satan represents, human nature. But before Satan, that was represented by Dionysus or Pan. So for a moment, I want to talk a little bit about Dionysus. And so, by the way, so we're exploring Satanism right now. I've mentioned this before. I am not a Satanist. I never was a Satanist. I don't have anything against Satanism. I think Satanism can be very powerful for people who resonate with it, because you are claiming the role, the archetype of the adversary. And it can be very helpful for people who are leaving religion. So I just want to point that out. But personally, I was never a Satanist, and I was never really attracted to Satanism. And that's because I first studied the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy has a lot of similarities, but Satanism is more about materialistic hedonism. It not necessarily, but its emphasis is more on like pleasure and indulgence in human nature. Whereas Friedrich Nietzsche was more about transforming yourself into something that is more than human and higher than human. It was about the will to power, the will to self-actualization. And that always attracted me. I always found that to be very, very powerful, rather than just being like, Satanism is kind of like, do whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting other people. And that's good that you're not, hurting other people. But Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy was more about overcoming humanity to become the Übermensch, or the superhuman, or the overman. And so he actually said, one thing that he said, and I really like this quote, was, what is good in man, and I'm paraphrasing, what is good in man is that he is a transition and not a destination. And he looked at humanity as being a bridge between the ape and the overman. In other words, the human was just a temporary transition from being an ape to being this godlike being. And I was always attracted to that. And so that's why I embraced more of a Nietzschean philosophy than like a LaVeyan philosophy. But like I said, nothing against it. I think that there's a lot of power for those that it resonates to be found in LaVeyan Satanism. But I want to talk a little bit about Dionysus, and I want to talk a little bit because LaVey talks about Dionysus here as being the precursor to Satan. Essentially, Dionysus was the precursor to Satan. And so let's talk a little bit about Dionysus. Who was Dionysus? What was Dionysus all about? And I was highly influenced by Dionysus. So like I said, I was never really influenced by like Satanism or LaVey. I was very much influenced by Dionysus and Nietzsche. And so for those who don't know, I was a performer for years. I was an extreme stunt performer. I performed acts like sword swallowing and lying on a bed of razor blades and things with hooks and needles and power drills, all this sort of stuff. And remember, don't try any of that. All right. I'm a professional. Don't do any of that. But my work was always very much influenced by the Dionysian cults. And the Dionysian cults were all about embracing the physical aspects of reality to achieve a transcendent state of mind. So I would kind of channel this energy into my performances where I would feed off, the energy of the crowd, the intensity of the act, the, ecstatic moment of being on stage and all that. So Dionysus and the Dionysian mysteries cults were very influential to me. But let's take a little look at this. So who is Dionysus? So like I said before, Dionysus was all about wine, celebration, and intoxication, and losing yourself in the moment. But the thing is that the followers of Dionysus weren't just looking to party or have a good time. It was part of that. Oh, by the way, the Dionysian mystery cults were a precursor to modern rock concerts. And I'll tell you why in just a minute, but that's also a very interesting point. And kind of funny because, Satan is sort of looked at as like, oh, like rock music is satanic or metal music is satanic. Well, Dionysus was the ultimate influence in what we think of as rock concerts today. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But like I said, so the Dionysian followers of Dionysus weren't just looking to party and have a good time. They certainly did, but they basically believed that in taking part of these wild rituals, they could actually connect to the divine. So you see, it's always this still, you pretty much like using the carnal to achieve a divine state. And so imagine it like this, like you would go to the Dionysian mystery cults and there would be intoxication in probably a lot of different ways. There would be usually orgies. There would sometimes be things that involve pain. There would be dancing, ritualistic music. And so if you imagine all this, you imagine being in a crowd with the music pounding, intoxication, all the sex, all the pleasure, all the pain, all this mixing together into one, dancing, all of this happening, your senses just being bombarded by all of this. And you suddenly feel like you're something much bigger, and you get that connection to the divine. And this is what the Dionysians were after, this feeling of becoming one with God through taking part, finding the God within, finding Dionysus within, finding the God within by being part of all, this very intense rituals. And so, like I said, it was a precursor to modern rock concerts, because if you think of rock concerts, what do you have? You have music, you have a huge crowd, you usually have, not usually orgies, but usually sexuality is in the crowd. You have intoxication, and you have mosh pits. And so rock concerts today, or even raves are another great one. Great example. Raves, rock concerts, these are the modern equivalent to the Dionysian mysteries, the Dionysian mystery cults. So it's super cool, very cool. So, and the Dionysian mysteries also were seen as a way to break free from everyday life. And it was about challenging the rules that society laid down. So do you see the influence that the satanic, how Satanism was influenced by this as well? Like Satan represents the fleshly, the carnal desire, and Satan represents going against established, the status quo and like religious rules. And so Dionysus too. Dionysus, as way before, was about challenging the rules that society had laid down. And people believed that they were experiencing, they would experience basically freedom from rules, freedom from, society looking down on them if they were a marginalized individual, freedom from all the constraints of society as they engaged in this, very ecstatic event where they were finding the God within and connecting with each other and the music and the intoxication, etc. And these mysteries were actually very controversial. And you can imagine why they were very controversial, is because they were against authority. Like basically the people in charge didn't like the idea of people thinking that they could just bypass the usual rules. Obviously, it was seen as threatening or even dangerous when you have a whole group of people coming together, challenging the norms, and also claiming that they're doing it with a God on their side. Now, but what's really interesting is that, like I said before, it wasn't just like some ancient religion. It was about human nature, and that there was more to life than following the rules, and that you need to let go and lose control. It was basically, that was a big part of it as well, as being free to let loose and lose control and see what happens because of it. And so the followers of Dionysus, the female followers of Dionysus were actually called Maenads, or mad women. And it's very cool. So Dionysus is usually depicted as being androgynous, and his followers are usually depicted as predominantly female. They were known as the Maenads, or the wild women. And it was a very, very female empowered rite as they formed the bulk of this of the followers of Dionysus. And the mad women, in not like a derogatory way, but in a way where they were not constrained by the rules of society. So the Dionysian mysteries, we're talking about a way of living and thinking that questions everything. And the cool thing about these mysteries is that they weren't for the wealthy and the powerful. They were for people that were marginalized, people that society didn't treat very well. Like I said, like women, who were often in that time pushed to the edges and marginalized. And women were incredibly important in these rites. And it also welcomed outsiders, foreigners, and anyone else who didn't neatly fit, any outcasts, outsiders, outliers. It was very much a mystery school, a mystery religion for those people. Now, which is really cool. And you can probably see why I was always very attracted to the Dionysian mysteries. And Dionysus is just cool. I like, like Satan is usually associated with the goat. Dionysus is associated with the bull. And I don't know, it's just, there's so like the Nietzschean philosophy. I just really enjoy Nietzschean philosophy because it's so powerful. And so this is why Nietzsche was attracted to Dionysus. Nietzsche called himself a prophet of Dionysus, and even talked about how Dionysus should replace Jesus. And because Nietzsche saw Dionysus as a symbol of life's wild, chaotic, and unpredictable forces. And he believed that at our core, we're a mix of all these chaotic energies that society is constantly trying to suppress, that society is trying to keep things orderly and controlled. And because they're trying to keep things orderly and controlled, they're basically watering down our natural power. They're diluting our power, essentially. That we have all this fire and power. See, it wasn't just about like, do whatever you want, go have fun. I mean, yeah, part of it was to have fun because you're expressing those things that are bottled up, but it's about more than that. It's about tapping into your inner fire, your inner power, your inner will. And it was tapping into, for Nietzsche, Dionysus was all about everything that was raw and untamed about an individual and life, passion, creativity, destruction and creation and renewal, all rolled into one force. And so in contrast to that, Nietzsche contrasted Dionysus with another Greek god, which was Apollo. And so Apollo represented order, reason, and harmony. And Nietzsche argued that the Apollonian forces weren't enough. In order to have a real, authentic life, you couldn't just be about reason and order. You had to also embrace the Dionysian, the wildness, the madness, the ecstasy, the chaos. And if you didn't have that, life would basically be very boring, blank, and sterile. So Nietzsche believed that the healthiest cultures. So it wasn't just about, it wasn't about rejecting reason and order. It was about finding a balance. And Nietzsche believed that the healthiest forces were the ones that balanced between the Apollonian and the Dionysian. But he thought that the Western society had become way too Apollonian and lost touch with the Dionysian. In other words, that our power was being watered down and diluted. And this is why Nietzsche thought people felt so disconnected, unfulfilled, and nihilistic. Now, I think that it's more than that, but that's a very important aspect, that part of what we are is being denied and repressed down into the shadow. It becomes your shadow self. So for Nietzsche, embracing Dionysus didn't mean giving in to chaos and abandoning reason. Obviously, reason's incredibly important, but it was about recognizing and accepting that the chaotic and passionate side of ourselves is a vital part of who we are. And this is a huge part of shadow work, by the way. For those who hear about shadow work and the shadow self, it's about acknowledging those chaotic, wild, and dark parts of ourselves as being part of who we are and accepting them and integrating them. Not in a way that's obviously going to hurt anyone or ruin our life, but in a smart and intelligent way. And if we do it in a smart and intelligent way, then we can live more authentic lives, and lives that are full of creativity and passion. And so Nietzsche saw Dionysus as a kind of model for a new way of understanding or living life, embracing the Dionysian. And so this is why, by the way, Nietzsche had this quote about replacing Jesus Christ with Dionysus. We're going to get more back to Satanism and how to sell your soul and the devil and hell and all that. But I really want to put this forward because, like I said, I find this to be very empowering. And so this is a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, and I'll read you this quote by Nietzsche. So Nietzsche says, quote, Dionysus versus the crucified, referring to Jesus, of course. Dionysus versus the crucified. There you have the antithesis. It is not a difference in regard to their martyrdom. It is a difference in the meaning of it. So Dionysus is also known as like the dying god, because just like Jesus Christ was dead and then rose from the dead, so Dionysus is depicted as dying and coming back as well. So basically, he's saying like Dionysus and Jesus are opposites, but they're the same in the fact that they're both these gods of renewal, but in different ways. So Nietzsche says, life itself, its eternal fruitfulness and recurrence creates torments, destruction, the will to annihilate. In the other case, suffering, the crucified as the innocent one, counts as an objection to this life, as a formula to its condemnation. So this is really interesting. Now, so let's talk about this. This is a very powerful quote, a very powerful meaning. Now I'll tell you right away, I don't agree with all of it. I agree with some of it, but let's unpack it. What is Nietzsche talking about here? So when Nietzsche is putting Dionysus against the crucified, Jesus, he's talking about two completely different ways of understanding life and suffering, okay? So for Nietzsche, Dionysus represents life in its most raw form. So according to Dionysus, life is full of both joy and suffering, creation and destruction. It's chaotic, it's unpredictable, it can be brutal, but it's also endlessly renewing itself. That's what he means by eternal recurrence. The idea that life is constantly going through cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. So basically what Dionysus represents is embracing the full spectrum of life, which means including embracing suffering as something essential and, for Nietzsche, even beautiful. And so the torment and destruction that life brings aren't seen as something to escape from or condemn. They're part of what it means to be alive. And so you can even see this huge difference in like Eastern religion as well, where Eastern, like Buddhism, that sees suffering as something negative. And the whole point of Buddhism is to escape suffering, escape suffering, escape suffering. Dionysus and Nietzsche is saying to embrace suffering as part of what it means to be alive. Now, real quick, I want to interject here because I partially agree with this, but not entirely, because it's very important. So here's my view on this, in that it's not necessarily suffering, but struggle. So what's the difference and why is this important? The reason why this is important is because some people can use this as an excuse to be assholes. Some people can be like, you know what? Life is suffering. It's always going to be suffering. So we're always going to have to be unaliving people and doing all these horrible things. And because life is suffering and it's just dog eat dog, law of the jungle. That's how it is. It's part of life. Well, here's the deal, though. We are here to transcend as well. And what this means is that suffering can be converted into struggle, where struggle is something that leads to our growth. And so here's a good example of the difference between, let's say, suffering and struggle. Both suffering and struggle entail something that sometimes entails overcoming. And so suffering, unnecessary suffering, is something like, let's say, not having enough food and going hungry. That's suffering. Or you know, all the torture in war or something like that. Being a prisoner or whatever. This is all suffering. And sometimes can it lead to more resilience? Yeah, but it's not necessary. And it can also lead to a lot of damage. It can lead to PTSD and physical damage and physical harm. It's not good. What struggle is something that can actually be enjoyed. So think about when you play a video game. When you play a video game, there is conflict. You struggle to beat the game. You struggle to get to the next level. And that's what makes your character level up, and that's what makes the game fun. If there wasn't struggle in the game wouldn't be fun at all. It wouldn't even be a game. You'd just be watching a movie or something. The struggle is the element that makes the game interesting. It's what allows your character to progress. But guess what? You enjoy it. Now, contrast that with suffering, where you just have no food and you're dying. That's completely different. So what I mean to say is that rather than saying like, oh, embracing, life is always going to be filled with suffering and we should embrace it, I would rather say life is always going to be filled with conflict. Life is always filled with conflict, and we can transform conflict from suffering into struggle. So that means what we can do is we can build a world, because there's a lot of suffering in this world right now. Doesn't have to be. And instead of being like, that's just part of life. No, we have to realize that we can convert that suffering into struggle, meaning that we can create a life where there is still conflict, but it's enjoyable, like playing a game. It's like, there's this challenge that I have to face, but I'm enjoying it. And it's an interesting part of life, and it's not suffering. So I just really want to point that out. That's a very important aspect, because a lot of people can try and use Nietzsche to justify horrible atrocities. And, a lot of people have used Nietzsche to try and justify horrible atrocities. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point. A lot of people have misinterpreted, twisted, or whatever. But anyway, with this, I want to make this very, very clear that we can transcend suffering, convert it into struggle so that life is enjoyable. But it's still, though, if we understand it that way, we're still engaging with life, engaging with reality, not being like, this is so hard. I just want to I just want to, reach nirvana or reach heaven. I want to escape. So that's ultimately what Dionysus is about. Dionysus isn't about escaping. It's about embracing. It's not about escaping. It's about embracing. And that's the difference too between like magic and Eastern religion, where Eastern religion is more about, a lot of Eastern religion is about escaping, whereas magic is about mastering reality. Now, escaping reality, mastering reality. Now, these are generalizations. There's a lot of differences here and there. But this is essentially the idea of Dionysus as the embrace of life, not the denial of life. So Nietzsche contrasted that with the figure of Jesus Christ. And so Nietzsche saw the Christian interpretation of suffering, which is represented as Christ's crucifixion, as something that needs to be denied. So in other words, the existence of suffering for Christianity is a display that the world is sinful and flawed. And so, in other words, Dionysus accepts life and can find meaning in suffering because it's part of life, where Christianity and Jesus symbolizes the rejection of this world, and that we need to basically like deny the world, right? That's a big part of Christianity, is to deny the world and reach heaven. And so remember, I'm not talking about like Gnostic Christianity or the esoteric interpretation of Christianity or the secret teachings of Christ or anything like that. I'm talking about the traditional, literalist, orthodox interpretation of Christianity that we have today. So what we have today is the denial of life, the denial of the world, the denial of the material, and the attempt to reach heaven and escape the world. Whereas Dionysus is about embracing life and embracing even the difficult times as part of life and seeing them as challenges and things that can be used towards growth. So let's snap back here to continue to explore the book of Lucifer. But I wanted to just mention this real quick, because in that particular section in the Satanic Bible, LaVey mentioned Dionysus as the precursor to Satan, and you can see a lot of similarities here, where Satan represents the embrace of human nature and the embrace of the flesh and the rebellion against religious norms and tradition, traditional narratives, traditional structures, etc. So LaVey continues here by saying so talking about now satanic rituals. So what are satanic rituals? LaVey is explaining what satanic rituals are, and LaVey says satanic ritual does not embrace the calling forth of demons. The Greek word demon meant a guardian spirit or source of inspiration. It was actually not exactly demon, it was daemon. You just slap an A right before the E, and you get daemon. And yeah, it wasn't an evil force, it was a guiding force. It was basically like your higher self. And by the way, for those who know our moderator, Jan Daemon, that's the name of their YouTube channel, by the way. You should go check them out. That is where they get their name from, is from that ancient idea of the daemon as the guardian spirit or the source of inspiration or the higher self, which is very cool. But anyway, what LaVey says here is the Satanist does not call upon these lesser devils or demons, but brazenly invokes those that infernal army of long-standing outrage, the devils themselves. In other words, that was phrased a little weird. Basically, what he's saying is that the Satanist does not call upon demons, they call upon the devils themselves. So not the lesser entities. Before, LaVey was talking a little bit about how sometimes people would invoke demons because the devils were too uncontrollable. They would want the lesser demons to try and do their bidding. And he's saying Satanists, no, they invoke the devils themselves. And so now he explains the four devils of Satanism, because remember, the Satanic Bible is divided into four parts: the book of Satan, the book of Lucifer, the book of Belial, and the book of Leviathan. And so these are the four crowned princes of hell. And this is quoting from the Satanic Bible. Satan, from the Hebrew word adversary, means opposite, accuser, lord of fire, the inferno, the south. And so if you even look at the book of Satan in the Satanic Bible, it's basically plays an accuser. It accuses and condemns the Christian church. And so it's very fiery. It's an accusation. It's a condemnation. That's what Satan represents. Then Lucifer, which is Roman, which represents the bringer of light, enlightenment, associated with the element of the air, the morning star, and the east. And, air is often associated with reason and logic and thinking as well. And so Lucifer here, and this is the satanic interpretation of Lucifer, not the Luciferian. But so here, Lucifer is one of the four crowned princes of hell that represents enlightenment. And so you'll notice that corresponds to what we're reading in the book of Lucifer, which lays out the philosophy of Satanism. So the book of Satan was about accusing the Christian church. The book of, and just religion in general, the book of Lucifer is about laying out, enlightening information. In other words, it's laying out the philosophy of Satanism. Then you have Belial, which is Hebrew. It says, without a master, baseness of the earth, independence associated with the north, and Leviathan, the serpent of the deeps, represented by the sea and the west. And we're going to be exploring the books of Belial and Leviathan later, which have to do with magic and ritual. And that's going to be interesting as well as we take a look at satanic magic in a future video. But those are the four crowned princes of hell that LaVey is saying that Satanists work with. And what's interesting here is that LaVey says the devils of past religions have always, at least in part, had animal characteristics, evidence of man's constant need to deny that he too is an animal. All right, so this is an interesting idea. So basically, LaVey is saying, if you look at the devils of past religions, they're usually part animal. Like the devil is usually, has hooves and, goat horns. And even Dionysus was depicted as a satyr or a faun, so half animal as well. And so what LaVey is saying is that these beings that are part animal are usually demonized and looked at as evil because they represent the animalistic nature of humanity, of man. And this is a very interesting idea. A very, very interesting idea, actually, because if you take, so let's talk, Hegel is my favorite philosopher. And Hegel had this idea of the dialectic of consciousness and basically the dialectic of our understanding that we are God. And so Hegel basically says, if you look at the very earliest religions, they're animistic religions. They're religions of animism. In other words, they worship nature. The very earliest religions were a worship of nature, worship of animals, like animal spirits and things like that. And so Hegel says this reflects humans' consciousness as viewing the natural world as being divine, associating divinity with the natural world. Now, if you fast forward a little bit to the times of Egypt, if you look at the Egyptian gods, what are they? Well, they're usually half human, half animal. If you look at all the different Egyptian gods, they're very often half human, half animal. Now, what Hegel's point with this idea was, because remember, first they saw animals as being divine. Now you have half human, half animal. And in Egyptian religion, Hegel is saying that this is showing that humans are starting to understand that humans have something to do with the divine. Because now, instead of the divine just being represented by nature and the animals, it's half nature, half human. So this reflects the understanding and consciousness that humanity, in some way, are having that human element within the divine. Then Hegel points out that you get to Greek mythology, and guess what? In Greek mythology, the gods are human. And so this is further reflecting humanity's developing consciousness of understanding that humans are gods. But Hegel thinks that that's still not complete, because if you look at Greek mythology, there's still a big separation between humans as mortals and the gods. The gods are very much have human-like characteristics and qualities, but there's a separation between the gods and the humans. There's that unbridgeable gap there. So for Hegel, humans are slowly getting close to the idea that humans are gods, but still haven't firmly understood that. Now, Hegel actually thought that Christianity was the religion that reflected that understanding. Because for Hegel, you have Christianity, which has who? Jesus Christ, which represents God as a human that walked on earth. It was, in Christianity, it usually says, he was fully God and fully human at the same time. So Hegel had a very different interpretation, obviously, than what we would think of today. Remember, I'm not a Christian, so Hegel would not be my favorite philosopher if he had a normal interpretation of Christianity. But he saw the Jesus as being fully God and fully human, as representing the idea that humans are finally starting to understand that humans are God. But of course, the Christian religion completely twisted this and started worshiping Jesus Christ as a god instead of realizing that we're all gods. And then Hegel thought there would be even going beyond Christianity would be reason. So Hegel thought everything previous to that was Vorstellung, or picture thinking, which is like understanding reality symbolically, like through animals and gods and stories. But then we would eventually reach reason, which wasn't like an atheistic reason or like an empirical understanding of like the materialist sciences, but reason with a capital R, which through our rational knowledge and faculties, we understood rationally that we are God. And that's what a lot of my work is about, by the way. It's about understanding rationally that we are God. And I mean, that's what my second book is all about as well. Meta-rationalism is about understanding metaphysics rationally. Anyway, I got a little sidetracked there, but it just kind of reminded me of that. This is nothing what LeVay is saying, but it's kind of similar. LeVay is saying, essentially, not in the exact same way, but he's saying that it's kind of gotten twisted, where you have the devil as represented as half man and half animal, and that the Christian church demonized the devil as being evil because it represented the animalistic nature in humanity, which is really interesting because originally the animal represented divinity, but then you go forward and it almost becomes associated with evil. But remember, it's about embracing both. It's about embracing the fact that we are gods, experiencing reality in human forms. And guess what? We should enjoy that. There's nothing wrong with it. We should enjoy the fact that we are gods and enjoy our creation in the form that we have. People don't understand. People are they want to escape so bad. They want to transcend so bad. Well, guess what? You escape, you transcend. You're going to be real fucking bored. Like the whole point is it's like when you're playing a video game, you just, I don't want to play the game anymore. Well, then what are you going to do? Well, obviously there's a lot of stuff. In real life, there's lots of things you can do, but you get the idea is that we're here to enjoy our creation, to learn and grow and experience, not to escape. Why the hell would we come here just to escape? Escape? That makes no sense. There's no logical continuity. It doesn't follow logically for us to localize someplace. For the whole point is to delocalize, to reject life, reject the world. And that's what Dionysus represents, is the embrace of a life. And let's see. So what about selling your soul, right? Because this chapter is called Hell, the Devil, and How to Sell Your Soul. So what is the satanic perspective on this? So it says this is LeVay. LeVay says, at the time of the Reformation, in the 16th century, the alchemist Dr. Johann Faustus discovered a method of summoning a demon, Mephistopheles, from hell and making a pact with him. He signed a contract in blood to turn his soul over to Mephistopheles in return for the feeling of youth, and at once became young. When the time came for Faustus to die, he retired to his room and was blown to bits. And this story was a protest of the times against science, chemistry, and magic. So this is where selling your soul, the idea originates from. Basically saying that it's trying to scare people away because it was represented by an alchemist, demonizing, again, science, chemistry, and magic. And so what LeVay says here is, to the Satanist, it is unnecessary to sell your soul to the devil or make a pact with Satan. So remember, LeVay is writing the Satanic Bible, and there's all these different things that people believe about Satanists. People believe that they worship Satan, that they've sold their souls to the devil. And LeVay is saying, all right, first of all, most Satanists don't see the devil as being a real being. They look at him as a symbol, so they don't worship the devil as a real entity. And Satanists don't sell their soul to the devil because they see that as being unnecessary. And LeVay says this threat of selling one's soul to the devil or losing one's souls to the devil was devised by Christianity to terrorize people so they would not stray from the fold. With scolding fingers and trembling voices, they taught their followers that if they gave in to the temptations of Satan and lived their lives according to their natural predilections, they would have to pay for their sinful pleasures by giving their souls to Satan and suffering in hell for all eternity. So another stick in the carrot and stick method of this operant conditioning engaged in by the church. LaVey says, pious prophets have taught man to fear Satan, but what of terms like God-fearing? If God is so merciful, why do people have to fear him? And I've mentioned this before, growing up as a Christian, here's what Christians in general, at least the type of Christians that I grew up around, Christians in general aren't afraid of the devil. They aren't afraid of Satan. They're afraid of God. And it constantly says in the Bible to fear God, have fear of God. And it's you hear that all the time. In church, you should have the fear of God. And this usually gets like, the excuse is usually like, oh, it means like respect. Okay, no. So here's the thing. Like I said, most Christians aren't afraid of the devil. They're more afraid of God. And what I mean by that is, they won't say that to you, but what I mean by that is, in Christianity, Satan is kind of looked at as like an idiot. Because Satan rebelled against God. And think about it, if Christianity were true, that'd be a dumb thing to do. Because obviously God is the all-powerful being, created everything. And so to think that you could defeat the creator of everything is stupid. And so according to Christianity, compared to God, Satan is stupid and weak. So in general, Christians aren't usually too afraid of Satan because they believe, I have God on my side. Satan can't do anything to me. God's on my side. So in general, Christians aren't usually really afraid of Satan, but they are afraid of God. They're afraid of sinning and messing up, not because of the devil. They're afraid of sinning and messing up because God is the one that has all the power. And if you make God unhappy, if you are a sinner in the eyes of God, then you're going to go to hell. And so really, it's a fear of God. Not a fear of the devil. Now, of course, like I said, they're not going to say this openly. But I know from firsthand experience, I was constantly terrified of displeasing God. I was terrified of the idea of hell. And I was afraid of demons more so than the devil for whatever reason, as a child. But in a very different way. I had sleepless nights because I was so many sleepless nights because I was terrified of hell and the devil and demons. Like I said, demons more than the devil. I guess the reason why demons more than the devil was because I thought like the devil was too busy to mess with me. So it would probably be a demon or something because the devil's got bigger fish to fry. That's probably why. But the fear of the demon, even the fear of demons that I had was a very different than like the fear of demons was more like how you would be terrified of like watching a scary movie or something, whereas God was the one that kept you in line because you didn't want to go to hell. Anyway, it's complicated. We'll talk about that some other time maybe, but it's a very interesting point here. So LaVey continues by saying, most Satanists do not accept Satan as an anthropomorphic being with cloven hooves, a barbed tail, and horns. So most Satanists don't see Satan as being a real being. He represents a force in nature, the powers of darkness, which have been named just that because no religion has taken these forces out of the darkness. And remember, you can use different archetypes. So if you don't like the archetype of Satan, the archetype of Dionysus essentially represents the same thing. They have different flavors, right? They have different feels, different vibes to them. But ultimately, it's about like picking what resonates with you. Dionysus always resonated with me a lot more than Satan. And the reason why I think is because I did have that Christian upbringing. And to me, Satan was like an idiot. So I never felt like he was very strong or powerful. Whereas Dionysus, however, was, through my understanding of it, especially tied to like the Nietzschean idea of will to power and embracing life. And what I was very much attracted to that. And I like, and I also just really love the, like the female empowerment as well, with the maenads and the liberation of like the outliers and you know, the outcasts. That was always really cool to me. But anyway, LaVey's whole idea here is basically talking about how everyone gets Satanism wrong. Satanists don't sell their souls to the devil. They see that as being redundant. They don't see the devil as being someone who's real or actually exists. And they see him as a force of nature and the embrace of the carnal aspect of life. And so LaVey's point is, that is what society and the church has called evil. The embrace of human nature and life. That aspect of life. And so LaVey says, so if evil they have named us, then evil we are. And so what? The satanic age is upon us. Why not take advantage of it and live? So Satanism is very much about sort of turning the, like, taking all that fire and embracing it. Like, you want to call us evil? All right, then we are evil. And that's why people don't really understand like why Satanists do the things they do or dress the way they do, because essentially Satanism has been called, Satanists have been called before atheists with horns, because they have basically a lot of the same beliefs as atheists. But why with horns? Because they're basically taking the archetypal imagery that Christianity has created and using it in their favor. Basically being like, instead of being like, you know, they say Christians will be like, oh, you're evil. Instead of trying to convince them like, no, we're not evil. See, we just embrace this aspect of life and we just think this way. We're not evil. Satanists don't do that. Satanists go, all right, bet we're fucking evil then. And we embrace our evil. And so it's about being very adversarial and subversive and using that and taking that energy and using it in a positive and empowering way, which I think is cool. I like that. I think that it can be very powerful and liberating for a lot of people, especially people who are stepping away from Christianity. But of course, it's not about actually being evil. Remember, it's not about literally being evil. It's about, you know, saying, hey, if that's what you're going to call us, fine. That's the satanic perspective. That's the satanic position. So I think we're going to stop there. But next week, we're going to continue probably by talking about satanic sex. So that'll be interesting because the next section here delves into satanic sex. So that's what we'll be talking about. But I hope you enjoyed this, my friends. Like I said, there's a whole playlist on the Satanic Bible. Check it out. And check out my other videos as well. And always let me know in the comments. Do you want to see more videos about Satanism? Do you want to hear more see more videos about Nietzschean philosophy and his ideas, or Dionysus? Tell me. I'm always looking at the comments. I'm always paying attention to what you guys say. And as always, remember, check out my book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, and my other books as well. The links are in the description of this video. Follow my podcast on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth, same thing in the description. And yeah, if you support my work, become a member, hit the join button below this video, get access to members only videos. It's a lot of them, and I appreciate it very, very much. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nucelina, Christopher Smith, Eon, Vanessa Moon, and our newest supporter, Dallas Pascal. Thank you all very much.